Time to see what's making news in the markets this week. My guest is Dr. Derrell Peel. He's a livestock marketing specialist with Oklahoma State University Extension. Thanks for being here, Derrell.
You bet.
So starting off, Friday, January 10th was a big day for USDA reports. Share with us a few of the big items from the data that was released.
Well, it was a big day. We're still trying to figure out exactly what happened in 2019 with these crops, and we got closer with these reports. These were supposed to be the final numbers for crop production. They're really not quite probably. USDA is still trying to assess some of these unharvested corn acres and those kind of things, but we're getting closer. And I think from a producer standpoint, we'd really like to sort of put 2019 behind us and think about the new year.
Yeah, and since we have had some time to digest those reports, where do you see the focus headed now in the markets for 2020?
Well, I think right now all eyes are on the trade situation, and obviously we're trying to finalize several trade things right now. We get USMCA finalized, hopefully. That will remove some uncertainty that's surrounded that issue. We hopefully have the phase one China trade deal, which will certainly be supportive to soybean markets, but really more broadly than that, probably a number of agricultural markets. So I think that's where the initial focus is, and then that's going to in turn set up for crop producers pretty quickly considerations of just what this means for their for their planting intentions, particularly from a corn and soybean standpoint in the Midwest.
And moving over to cattle, does it look like producers in that sector can go into 2020 with maybe a bit more clarity than what we were going into on 2019?
I do. The trade situation is also better from a livestock and meat standpoint. And in general, I think things look pretty promising from a cattle industry standpoint. We're waiting. It'll be a little bit yet before we have the final USDA numbers, I should say the January 1 USDA numbers on cattle inventories. But we think those numbers are pretty stable. And so that sets up a slightly more supportive supply situation. Not that production is going to go down, but it won't continue to increase like it has. And combine that with the demand, and again, the trade picture looks a little more promising, enhancing demand from that component.
And Derrell, let me also get a question in here about live and feeder markets. How are things positioned right now, and what advice can you share for the producers watching?
Well, again, we've seen a nice run up towards the end of 2019. We had some struggles kind of in the middle of the year, or the third quarter of 2019. Finished the year on a pretty strong note, and it looks like we're carrying that through here into 2020. So there's some opportunities here. Producers, both live cattle as well as feeder cattle, probably we can be kind of optimistic and carry that forward. At the same time, you probably want to look at some pricing opportunities. I wouldn't forget the idea that we maybe need a little bit of risk management. There's still plenty of opportunities for these markets to be a little bit volatile. Certainly you want to pay attention to opportunities that are presented in the marketplace.
And let's talk about beef challenges for 2020. What do you see on that end?
Well, again, we're overall pretty positive. Beef demand looks pretty strong, particularly the trade side. Domestic, so far so good. We kind of said that for most of last year as well, but it looks perhaps even a little more positive this year. Obviously, one of the bigger wild cards, I suppose, is just the fact that it's a presidential election year. We're going to continue to see some volatility and some uncertainty in the markets relative to some of those issues. We're not out of the woods with all of these trade issues yet, so we're going to keep an eye on that going forward. And if you throw in some, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which, come and go, but they could flare up and be a bigger deal, impacting, say, energy values or currency values, all of those things are things we have to keep an eye on.
And then African swine fever, another issue we'll continue to track into 2020. Now, this is something that's been in the news cycle for a while. Impacts from this disease still aren't fully understood, though, right?
Well, they're not. I mean, it's a very dynamic situation. We don't know exactly where we're at, and the biggest part of that, of course, is in China. They did lose a lot of production in 2019. They will see decreased production in 2020. Maybe we don't know the exact magnitude, but the bottom line is there's less meat on the planet right now than there was this time a year ago. And that's going to be supportive to all protein markets. Obviously, the focus is on pork initially, from a China standpoint and broadly from a global standpoint, but it really spills over into the other meats as well. There's certainly some underpinning support here for all protein markets in 2020.
And finally, Derrell, the first cattle on feed report of 2020 coming out next week. What do we need to be paying attention with that report?
Well, I think we're going to see, again, probably a decent marketings number. Placements will probably be a little bit higher than a year ago, so we're maintaining that overall feedlot inventory that's about 2% above a year ago. Again, it's not continuing to get bigger, and I think over the next few months we'll start to see that feedlot inventory shrink a little bit on a year-over-year basis as we work through these peak feeder cattle supplies, but we're probably not quite there yet. We've still got a couple of months to go.
All right, Dr. Derrell Peel, thanks for being here with us today. Always good to talk to you.
You bet, anytime.